معنا خط بكتابك الترحيب لو صار ليلك وجنة بالدجا في الليل تسري.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. إنه من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله تعالى، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. أما بعد, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, today is our weekly class, Al-Raqa'iq, Matters of the Heart. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala soften our hearts, and may Allah fill our hearts with the Iman and Taqwa. Ameen. عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. This is a beautiful hadith, متفق عليه. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: سبعة يظلهم الله عز وجل في ظله يوم لا ظل إلا ظله. إمام عادل، وشاب نشأ في عبادة الله عز وجل، ورجل قلبه معلق بالمساجد، ورجلان تحابا في الله اجتمعا عليه وتفرقا عليه، ورجل دعته امرأة ذات حسن وجمال فقال إني أخاف الله، ورجل تصدق بصدقة فأخفاها حتى لا تعلم شماله ما تنفق يمينه، ورجل ذكر الله خاليا ففاضت عيناه. متفق عليه. Abu Hurairah رضي الله عنه, may Allah be pleased with him, reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, 7 are, so there are 7 categories, 7 persons. 7 are the persons whom Allah will give shade of his throne on the day when there would be no shade other than his throne's shade, the shade of his throne. A just ruler, a youth who grew up in worshipping Allah, a man whose heart is attached to masajid, mosque, 2 persons who love and meet each other and depart from each other, and depart from each other for the sake of Allah. A man, an extremely beautiful woman seduces him for illicit relation, but he rejects this offer by saying, I fear Allah. A man who gives in charity and conceals it to such an extent that the left hand does not know what the right hand has given, and a person who remembers Allah in solitude and his eyes well up. This is agreed upon. It's reported by both Imam Bukhari and Muslim. Now, let us reflect on this beautiful hadith. This hadith talks about the day of resurrection, the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah, day of reckoning. On that day, my dear brothers and sisters, where the sun will be above our heads, though we know on that day, all what we see, all this cosmos will be totally different, yet there will be a sun, okay, which will be above people's heads, and people will be sweating. And these 7 categories, they will not be, because they are in the shade of the mighty throne of Allah. And others will be in the shade of the sadaqah. So here the Prophet ﷺ mentioned 7 categories, 7 types. سبعة يظلهم الله في ظله يوم لا ظل إلا ظله. So these are 7 categories, 7 groups who will be in the shade of the mighty throne. Who are they? When there will not be any shade on that day, except the shade of the mighty throne of Allah Azza wa Jal, or the shade of your sadaqah, as mentioned in the other ahadith. So the first one is a just ruler, Imamun Adil. So if this ruler is Adil, just, and Mu'min, not only Adil and Mu'min. So here he's talking about a believer, not about a disbeliever who may be ruling justly in his country, but a ruler who fears Allah, believes in Allah, he will be in the shade of the throne of Allah Azza wa Jal. Like the like the Najashi, the niggers, Najashi, when the Prophet ﷺ told the Sahaba, go to Abyssinia, because there is a king, okay? No one will be wronged in his kingdom, because he is a just ruler. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, Umar ibn al-Khattab, these are just rulers. Okay? A just ruler. Because the ruler is supposed to be just. Because he's the highest authority in the country. He's the highest. And the subjects, all the people are his subjects. So he's like a father. So he has to be fair and just to all of them. And he has to treat them justly. Because he will be held accountable before Allah, and he will be questioned about his subjects. Can you imagine this now? A ruler, the population of his subjects whom he rules, 100 million, 50 million, 70 million, and he will be questioned about that. Allah will question him. He's responsible. That's why Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, the night he's crying and praying, and during the day he takes care of his subjects. And he used to say, woe to me, woe to me. If I sleep the night, I will lose myself. And if I sleep the day, I will lose my subjects. He used to say, if a mule in Iraq, a mule, an animal, fall from a cliff, I will be questioned about that because I did not make and bathe and make the way safe for that mule. And when he was dying, those whom he appointed the committee to choose one of them as successor and Khalifa, commander of the faithful, the believers, he told them, not my son. It is enough that one from the family of Al-Khattab will be questioned. Enough one. A just ruler. This is number one. Then a youth, shabun, youth, young man, nasha fi ibadatillahi azza wa jal, a young man who grew up obeying Allah, worshipping Allah, observing Allah's limits, fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do righteous deeds, controls his desires, lowering his gaze. So this young man, that's why Allah singled him out. Why? He singled a young man, not an old man. Because this young man is surrounded by all temptations. All temptations. He's young, he has the vigor, the strength, sexual urge. He's in his prime youth, surrounded by temptations, haram everywhere. So everything is against him, against him. Yet, he overcomes all these temptations, all his desires. He brings them under his thumb. He controls himself, he or she. His nafs tells him, look at this beautiful girl. He says, Allah sees me. He puts his head down. The girl, look at this handsome boy. She puts her head down, say, Allah sees me. And he seeks Allah's protection immediately, or she seeks Allah's protection immediately. So this young boy or young girl who resists out of the fear of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards them on that day, and he elevates their status. He elevates their status and grants them this shade, to sit in the shade of the mighty throne of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Whereas an old man, he's supposed to be turning to Allah when you are old, because your desires, they become weak. So you don't have that urge anymore. Physically, you are weak and feeble. So you are supposed to be repenting and coming to Allah Azza wa Jalla and asking Allah forgiveness for the sins that you committed in the past. But if you are old man, young, old man or old woman, and you are still sinning, then this is the great loss. And that's why the Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, among those whom he hates, was Sheikh Zan, old man who commits zina, fornication, adultery. Or a woman, you're an old man and you still commit zina. So Allah's anger is intensified upon an increase regarding this person. So here Allah singled out the young man or young woman, a youth who grew up worshipping Allah, worshipping Allah. Then a man whose heart is attached to the masajid. So this is another category. This man, his heart, whether he's old or young, his heart is attached to the masajid. He's always looking forward to the time of the salah, to going to the masjid, always looking at his watch. Is it time for salah? It is time for salah. Because his heart is in the masjid, as one of our mashayikh said, that his heart, mu'allaq, is attached in the masjid. As if he comes out, figuratively, metaphorically, he leaves his heart in the masjid. So when he's in the dunya, he's without heart. His heart is in the masjid. His heart is clung and attached to the masjid. He feels serenity and tranquility and peace of mind when he is in the masjid. So that's why he's longing to go back. وَرَجُلٌ قَلْبُهُ مُعَلَّقٌ بِالْمَسَاجِدِ, a man whose heart is attached to the masajid. Then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned two persons, rajulan, two men or two sisters, who love and meet each other and depart from each other for the sake of Allah. Okay. So they visit each other for the sake of Allah. They meet for the sake of Allah. They love each other for the sake of Allah. And those who love each other for the sake of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He elevates their status on that day and He addressed them. Where are those who love each other for my sake? Get up! So they will get up, those who love each other for the sake of Allah. And they will be sitting on pulpits of light. Even the martyrs, they envy them and the prophets and messengers, because they love each other for the sake of Allah. And let me pause here. To love for someone for the sake of Allah, it's not lip service to say, I love you with the sake of Allah. It's more than that. When you say that you love someone for the sake of Allah, that means you will not spare any effort in helping your brother or sister when he or she is in need. Today it became so cheap. I love you with the sake of Allah. I love you with the sake of Allah. Is it true? Is it true that when your brother is in need and he comes to you, you stand by him? When we read in the biographies of the Salaf, we see amazing, we come across amazing stories. One of the Salaf, he came to his brother's house, brother in Islam, because he was in need. He was in need. He didn't find his brother. So the slave girl came out, said, where is your master? She said, he's not here. He told her, bring his safe his safe, the box in which he puts the money. He brought the box, opened, he took what he wanted, and he left. When her master came, he told her, if that is true, then you are free for the sake of Allah. He set her free because he felt very happy for what his brother did. The Salaf, they used to say, the sign of the true love between brothers, that you visit your brother, sleep in his house, you visit him with your family, with your wife, and you sleep with your wife in his house. They give you a room and you sleep, so you consider his house as your own house. That is the real brotherhood. Real brotherhood. So this is the love, to love someone for the sake of Allah. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, when you love someone for the sake of Allah, what should you do? You visit him in his house and tell him, I love you for the sake of Allah. He's in another city, he's in another town. You travel to him and inform him that I love you for the sake of Allah. Because when a man passed and one of the Sahaba said, I love him for the sake of Allah, Prophet ﷺ told him, have you informed him? He said, no. He said, go and tell him. When the man came to Sayyidina Hudayfa and he said, I love you for the sake of Allah, Sayyidina Hudayfa asked him and made him to swear by Allah. Allah, by Allah, you love me for his sake? He said, yes. He said, may Allah love you as you loved me for his sake. So when you say that you love someone for the sake of Allah, be truthful. That you are saying it from your heart and you really love this person for the sake of Allah. So we should not make it just a lip service. Okay. Two persons who love and meet each other and depart from each other for the sake of Allah. So they love each other for the sake of Allah. And when they leave each other also for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And here I would like to remind myself and my brothers and sisters. The Prophet ﷺ has said in an authentic hadith, if two persons love each other for the sake of Allah, and then something happened between them and started to hate each other, or they cut the relationship with each other, he said, the Prophet ﷺ, that will happen because of a sin one of them committed. One of them committed a sin, so that's why their hearts now repel, and they do not attract to each other. They do not have that affinity and tendency towards each other, because there is a sin here in between. Some of them committed that sin. So the hearts are now turned away from each other. Then the Prophet ﷺ continued mentioning those who will be in the shade of the throne of Allah. ورجل دعته امرأة ذات حسن وجمال فقال إني أخاف الله. A man, an extremely beautiful woman, seduces him for illicit relation. But he rejects this offer by saying, I fear Allah, like Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf. She is a beautiful woman. And he is a slave. She's the wife of the governor. And he is a young man, stranger. See, all these factors normally contribute to the weakness. Young, beautiful woman. She has the power. She locks the doors and the gates. He's a stranger. No one will know about it. No one will talk about it. He's not known. Yet, ma'ad Allah. No. He refused all that. وغلقت الأبواب. And she locked, make sure all the doors are locked, one after the other. وقالت هيت لك. Here I am. And he rejected that. She felt humiliated. My slave refuses. She went mad. So she decided to attack him, to force him. He ran away. She tore his shirt, as you know. And here I would like to remind you about some stories you'll find in the books of the tafsir, maybe in Qurtubi and other books. And maybe these stories are taken from the books of the Ahl al-Kitab, which are unauthentic, that Yusuf was about to sleep with her. And then he saw the picture of his father biting his finger. So when you hear these stories, they are fairy tales. Don't believe that. Allah protected him. So nothing like that happened. He ran away from her. And the meaning وَهَمَّتْ بِهِ وَهَمَّ بِهَا, she intended to have him. Yes, that's what she invited him for. How about his intention? No, that didn't happen. It didn't happen because of the burhan, because of the iman, because of the taqwa of Allah. Had there been no taqwa, that would have happened. But the taqwa and the iman, that was the barrier. Prevented him from having mutual reaction. So he ran away from her. Because prophets are men. Are men. But what prevented him? The fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because of the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah saved him. The taqwa of Allah. So if someone is called by a woman, seduced by a woman, and he says, I fear Allah, then he will be in the shade of the throne on that day. Like, you know, the hadith of the three who got trapped in the cave. And one of them mentioned that I had a cousin, female cousin, who came to me and she wanted me to help her, and I refused to help her, except on one condition, that she allows me to sleep with her. She refused. And she came again because of the need. And she agreed. And when he was about to commit that shameful deed, and he is helpless, she told him, في الله في الله ولا تفض الخاتم إلا بحقه. Fear Allah and do not break the seal except in the rightful way, the legal way, through marriage. And the seal, you know, the hymen. So when she told him that, and normally a man, when he's in that state, is very vulnerable and very weak. And that's why, my dear brothers and sisters, and I'm talking to the sisters, those who are married, when your husband calls you, go. Because a man at that moment is very weak. He asks you to come, go. Don't refuse. Because that can lead to talaq. Because at that moment he is very weak. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, فَلْتُجِبْهُ وَلَوْ كَانَتْ عَلَى التَّنُّورِ. She should respond and answer his call when he asks her to come to bed. Even if he is making bread, busy in the kitchen, putting food in the oven, leave everything in hand, go to your husband. In another hadith, even if he is if they are traveling and they are on the back of the horse, this camel, he told his wife, I want you. She should not refuse. They should look for a place and fulfill his desire. Because man is, at that moment is very, very weak. And many cases of talaq happens because of this. And women, always they give lame excuses. Have a headache, have a headache. See Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now this man, when he is in that situation, the moment she told him, ittaqillah, fi Allah, he left her. Which means that he has this iman. He has the iman. But the shaitan played with his mind. So when he asked her for such a request, but that now she is warning him. So he left her. He didn't touch her. And you know, the stone moved when he mentioned this deed that Allah accepted because he was sincere. He was sincere. So this is another category. A man whom an extremely beautiful woman seduces him. And we read in the histories of the Salaf, many stories happen like that, many stories. Some pious men, wicked people, they sent women to them to seduce them. And they failed. They failed because Allah protected his servants. But he rejects such an offer and he said, I fear Allah. I fear Allah. Then another one, a man who gives in charity and conceals it. And this is very, very important, my dear brothers and sisters, to give sadaqah secretly. Secretly. It's very important that you have something you do, only Allah knows about it, nobody else. And there are many pious people They were doing righteous deeds. No one knew about these deeds except when they died. When they died, people found out. So have something between you and Allah. No one knows about it. No one knows about it. Sadaqatu sir, the Prophet ﷺ said, تطفئ غضب الرب. صدقة السر تطفئ غضب الرب. Giving charity secretly puts out Allah's anger. No one knows about this sadaqah except Allah. Yes, it is permissible to give sadaqah publicly for the sake of encouraging others. They are raising donations and things like that. That's different. But keep something secret. No one knows about it. No one knows about it. A man who gives in charity and conceals it to the extent that the left hand does not know what the right hand has given. You put your hand in your pocket, you pulled out, and you gave out. How much? The left hand doesn't know. Doesn't know. So this what you'll find when you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll find that. Because it is done exclusively for Him and purely for Him. And the seventh one, and the person who remembers Allah in solitude, when he's alone by himself or herself, and his eyes well up, You are sitting by yourself, remembering Allah, and you remembered Allah, and out of the fear of Allah, your tears start rolling down in your cheeks. Because you remembered you did something. And now you are afraid, and now you regret. So when you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your eyes well up. And when you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sweetness of the dhikr move the heart, stir this iman inside, and the heart crumbles, bows. Yes, the heart bows. And when the heart is in that state of humility, the rest of the limbs follow. And the eyes will start shedding the tears. وَرَجُلٌ ذَكَرَ اللَّهَ خَالِيًا فَفَاضَتْ عَيْنَاهُ. You are by yourself, and that's why you need, my dear brother and sister, to have khalwa, privacy by yourself and Allah on daily basis. By yourself. Whether before you go to sleep, by yourself. And this is where you make muhasabah to yourself. And try to be away from the people as much as you can. And there's no need for you to be with them. because among the things that harden the heart is the mixing with people, constant interaction with the people, always with the people, always. You don't have time for yourself to contemplate, to reflect. You are busy, 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 busy. No, it's very dangerous. It kills the heart. And our gatherings, most of the time, they will not remind you about your Lord. Most of our gatherings, gossiping, backbiting, etc. Or even if it's no gossiping and no backbiting, we are talking only about mundane affairs, about dunya, dunya, dunya. That's it. Children, family, business. So that's why you try to be away from the people as much as you can. If you want to keep your heart healthy and have this serenity and peace of mind, so that your eyes will well up with tears, so you are far away from the people. A person who remembers Allah in solitude, khaliyan, no one around him, it's not for showing up, showing off. No. It is real fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and his eyes well up. So you see these drops of tears, if they are out of the fear of Allah, okay, the eyes that cry out of the fear of Allah, Allah will prohibit them from the hellfire. عينان لا تمسهم النار. Two eyes, they will not be touched by the fire, which means the person who has these two eyes will not be entered to the hellfire. عينان لا تمسهم النار. عين بكت من خشية الله. An eye that cried out of the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one eye. Out of the fear of Allah, this eye cried. And this person cried. وعين باتت تحرس في سبيل الله. The other eye, the eye that spent the night guarding in the garden for the sake of Allah. He spent the night awake, guarding the frontiers of the Muslim Ummah. There on the front lines, confronting the enemies with the mujahideen in the jihad. So that eye that was awake the whole night will not be touched by the fire. عين باتت تحرس في سبيل الله. في سبيل الله. Subhanallah. In one of the trips of the Prophet ﷺ, he told the Sahaba, who will guard us tonight? Okay. Because I fear the mushriks. So two of the Sahaba volunteered. So then they agreed. One will guard the first part of the night, then the second one will get up and take over. So the first one started praying tahajjud. So the mushriks, they were tracing the Muslims, and one of the mushriks, and of course the moon was full, So this mushrik, he saw this man going up and down in the salah. He shot him with an arrow. He was in the salah. He pulled the arrow and he continued the salah. With another one, he pulled it. You see the khushu' and throw it and continued. Then he remembered that he is guarding the Muslims. So he concluded his salah, though he was bleeding, and awoke his brother, told him, the enemies are near. So get up. And his brother was surprised when he saw him. So why didn't you tell me when he shot you with the first arrow? He said, I was in the salah. I didn't want to finish my salah. See the khushu'? So this is an eye that will not be touched by the fire. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he was told about this, he did not tell the man who continues praying while he was bleeding to repeat his salah. He didn't ask him to repeat his salah. He didn't tell him, oh, the blood is najis, is impure, and you were bleeding, so your salah will be was invalid. He didn't, which is an explicit evidence that the blood of a human being is not najis, impure. It is pure. What is najis? The blood of menses, menstrual blood, is impure. So there are here two eyes that they will not be touched by the fire. An eye cried out of fear of Allah, and another one spent the night guarding for the sake of Allah. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant us the khushu' and make us among those who their eyes will be always welling up with tears out of the fear of Allah. May Allah make us among those who will be in the shade of the mighty throne of Allah Azza wa Jal. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us our faults and mistakes and sins and ignorance. Ameen. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us remain steadfast on this beautiful deen, al-Islam, until we meet him and find him pleased with all of us. Ameen. And may Allah reward all of you, my dear brothers and sisters, immensely for your patience and attendance. Barakallahu feekum. Jazakum Allahu khayra. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullahu khair, Sheikh, for today's beautiful lessons, Matters of the Heart, episode 62 today. Yesterday we had Fundamentals of Tawheed, episode 61, but we were not able to have yesterday's lesson. So inshallah we will have episode 62 next week of Fundamentals of Tawheed, in case any of you are not in the WhatsApp group and you did not get the message. Now we can start with the Q&A session, inshallah. I'm going to find where we were last week, and we can start from there, inshallah. Our first question, Sheikh, is asking, Assalamu alaikum. When I go to visit the grave and I see people watering the graves, is this correct or is this haram?
Doing what?
They're watering the grave. They put water onto the soil.
No, that's not sunnah. That's not sunnah. And some people, they plant some trees around the grave. That's also not sunnah. The background of such a belief is that the Prophet ﷺ, he passed by two graves and he asked for a green leaf of branch of a tree, and he divided that green branch of a tree into two parts and places on each grave part of it. And he said, may Allah reduce the punishment they receive in their graves, as long as these two leaves remain green. So some they say, okay, so that's why we can plant a tree which will be always green. And this is, of course, it shows their shallow understanding. Because the Prophet ﷺ, when he did that, Allah informed him that these two graves, the people inside, they are going through this torment and punishment in their graves. That's number one. So who told you now that this person that you want to put a tree on his grave is going through this punishment? You don't know. Also, the Sahaba, they didn't do that. The Sahaba, they didn't do that. Whenever they bury someone, they put a tree or plant a tree or glass on his grave or around his grave. So all these are innovations. All these are bid'ah. So Muslims should fear Allah and stop practicing and doing things like that. Okay. I hope this is clear to the questioner.
Jazakumullahu khair, Sheikh. Our next question is asking Sheikh, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to ask you the explanation of a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ told Abu Huraira that a believer is always pure. Does this have any relation to someone who is not in the state of wudu that touches the Quran, or the same with a woman in her hayd?
The hadith, the Abu Huraira was in a state of janaba. State of janaba. State of janaba, that means he fulfilled his biological needs and he hasn't taken a shower. So he saw the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet saw him. So he went back and took a shower. He didn't want to meet the Prophet ﷺ while he is in the state of janaba. So the Prophet ﷺ asked him, why did you go back? Why did you hide yourself? Where did you go? He said, I was in state of janaba and I didn't like to meet you while I'm in that state. The Prophet ﷺ told him, Subhanallah, innal mu'min la yanjus or la yajnub. That means the mu'min will not become impure. So we cannot say if a woman is in her menses or a man in state of janaba, he is impure, najis. No, he's tahir. He is tahir. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he sleeps with his wives when they are in their periods. I think Salama or another one was sleeping with the Prophet ﷺ under the same blanket. And then she got her period. She got up and put on her clothes that she normally wears. She gets her period, and she came back. And the Prophet ﷺ asked her, Anafisti, or have you got your period? She said, yes. She said, come. And she slept with the Prophet ﷺ under the same cover. Aisha radiallahu anha used to say the Prophet ﷺ would sleep with all of us. Sleep in the sense that we shared the bed, not sleep that we have intimacy. And he would fondle with the upper part of the body of each of us, and he would tell us to tie their izar, like a petticoat, on the lower part. So it is permissible for a man to relieve himself, to fondle with his partner and use the upper part of her body. So woman, when she is having her period, she is not najis. She is not najis. She is not impure, or the man who's in a state of janaba. This is our Islam, because there were two extremes. among the kuffar, the people of the book. Some of them, when a woman gets her period, she leaves the house, and there is a special room for her outside, and her food and everything is separate. And she will not enter the house till she is clean. This is one extreme. The other extreme, they sleep with them when they have their period. So Islam said, no, you don't sleep with them, okay? But they can share the bed with you. You can fondle with the upper part of the body, only avoid the place of hurt. As Allah said, فَاعْتَزِلُوا النِّسَاءَ فِي الْمَحِيضِ. Al-mahid is the place of hurt, which is the private part. That you should not come to that area. The rest of the body is permissible. Now, when the Prophet ﷺ told Abu Hurairah, radiallahu anhu, that the mu'min will not become impure, does this mean that when you are in state of janaba, you can touch the Quran, or a woman can touch the Quran? The answer, no. Because touching the Quran when you are not in state of tahara should be avoided, to be on the safe side. Because there are some ahadith, most of them, they have, in each narration has a weakness, but maybe collectively can be accepted or strengthened each other, the narrations. Okay, so it should be avoided. It should be avoided if there is, especially touching it, the mushaf. I'm talking about the mushaf. But if you have the mobile phone or the iPad or the normal computer, you can read from the screen, no problem. But touching the mushaf itself should be avoided. Unless there is a necessity. If there is a necessity, like you are a teacher teaching Quran, then you can wear gloves in order to touch it. So try, when it comes to touching the Quran, to avoid touching the Quran when you are not in state of tahara. If you don't have wudu, go and take wudu and read the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is this clear to the questioner?
Jazakumullahu khair, Sheikh. Our next question, Sheikh, is asking, Assalamu alaikum. Sheikh, my question is about the hadith of the one who died and is greeted by the other dead people and ask him or her about the current world situation. Is this hadith sahih?
Yeah, the hadith is sahih, and this is talking about the barzakh life. The souls they meet. This hadith authenticated, it is reported in Sahih al-Jami'. So the souls they meet in the Jannah, and they ask each other. They ask about the news of the people who they left in the dunya, and they ask this soul who just arrived about the soul died before, and this newcomer will tell them, oh, didn't he come? Didn't he arrive? He said, no. ذهب إلى أمه الهاوية. So his soul did not come to them. So this happens in another world, which is عالم الأرواح, that is the world of the spirits, the souls. And the souls of the mu'mineen will be in the Jannah. Okay, not in the dunya. And the dead, of course, they do not know. They do not know. They don't have knowledge, but they ask this soul that just came to them. So the people who died, they do not know, because we don't have any connection with them. We don't have any connection with the dead. So that's why you cannot ask the dead. You cannot come to the grave and ask them, because they do not hear you, as Allah said, وَمَا أَنْتَ بِمُسْمِعٍ مَنْ فِي الْقُبُورِ. You cannot make the dead in the graves to hear you. So the dead, they do not hear. The Prophet ﷺ, when you send salam upon him, It is an angel conveys the salam to him. An angel conveys the salam to him, and Allah returns his ruh, his soul, to his body, because the soul is in the upper assembly. Okay, so to use such narrations that the people, the dead, they know and they hear, and no, this is not true. It's not true. There is no evidence telling us that the life of the dead is like the life before they die. It is a barzakh life, totally different. And that is, their souls are in the Jannah, not with us here. Is this clear to the questioner?
Jazakumullahu khair, Sheikh. I have a follow-up question of my own. I believe you may have answered this question before in the past, but I'd like to clarify. When we go to sleep, I know that our souls are taken to barzakh. And so if you meet someone who is dead, who has passed away in your sleep, in your dreams, does that mean that your soul in barzakh has met that person in barzakh?
When we sleep, the souls, they go up to Allah Azza wa Jal. That's why every night we die. Every night we die. Die in the sense, the soul, they go to Allah. But they did not leave the body totally. There's still connection. That's why you breathe. The total departure will happen when one dies totally. That's why sleep is called minor death, minor mawt al-sughra, minor death. Whereas the death, real death, that is the major one, because the soul will leave the body totally, and then the body will become motionless. So though the souls, they are with Allah every night, still there is a connection between the body and the soul. So when the souls are with Allah, that is another world. Okay. Whether this soul met that soul or it is ru'ya from Allah Azza wa Jal, because you, in the sleep, you see those who passed away. And you talk to them and they talk to you, and because it's another mysterious world, we don't know anything about it. Okay. That's why if it is a good vision, good dream, you relate it. If it is something frightening, scary, you spit on your left side and you don't mention it. If you see something horrible, you don't mention it. Okay. But if you see something good, you relate it to someone who can interpret that dream for you. So the souls, they go every night to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why when you get up in the morning, you say, Alhamdulillah, alladhi ahyana ba'da ma amatana. All praise is due to Allah who gave us life after we were dead. After we were dead. Is this clear to you?
Yes, Jazakumullahu khair, Sheikh. If you wouldn't mind, there's a question I'd like to ask you after the session is over about a dream that I have had recently. But it's a bit long, so I won't ask it now. Our next question, Sheikh.
I don't interpret dreams, so no need to relate it to me. So ask someone who can relate it.
Okay, inshallah. Okay. Our next question is asking, Sheikh, what is your opinion on using philosophy or ilm al-kalam, to give evidence of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
See, to use ilm al-kalam and philosophy to prove the existence of Allah, if it is you just use that, which is rational argument, even someone who didn't study philosophy can argue in the same way rationally, because it is a common sense. Okay, so to rationalize is not confined and limited to philosophy. That if you don't know philosophy, you cannot rationalize, you cannot think right, which is not true. It's not true. Okay, just see a Bedouin okay, person who, a nomad, living in the desert. They asked him, how did you know Allah? Simply, see his argument. Yeah, though it is simple, but it is deep and profound. He said, البعرة تدل على البعير. When you see a dropping of an animal, this tells you that there was an animal here. If you see a dropping of the stool of an animal, you will conclude there must be an animal. البعرة تدل على البعير. آثار الأقدام تدل على المسير. If you see footprints, you conclude people passed here because these are their footprints. وسماء ذات أبراج, and the sky full of constellations. وأرض ذات فجاج, and the land full of valleys and canyons. And ألا يدلان على اللطيف الخبير? Aren't these enough signs to tell you about the most subtle, the most aware? This is a Bedouin. He didn't study the works of Aristotle or Plato or Socrates. This is the fitra, this is the common sense, this is the gift, the mind Allah has given us. He is using what is known as cause and effect approach. There is effect, there must be a cause for it. The effect is the dropping of the animal. Who caused that? Animal. There is effect, footprints. Who caused it? People, they passed here. Constellations. These are manifestations of someone who made them. Okay. What many of our brothers today in the West, they argue with the kuffar, and because now there is a wave of atheism in the West, and not in the West, all over. So they use these as techniques and means to convince the atheists or the agnostics or the non-Muslims, using these rational arguments, then there's no harm. But my advice for those brothers, don't waste your time on that. First of all, give priority to your deen. Study your Islam. First of all, be strong in your deen. Then there's no harm, because you will be able to critique these works. You'll be able to know what is right, what can be accepted, what Islam can accept, and what Islam we can reject. But if you just totally absorbed and engrossed in the works of the philosophers, I am afraid, okay, you will regret, because many they regretted in the history of Islam. Scholars who went deep into it, Juwayni, Ghazali, Shahrastani, Razi, all of them, they cried and regretted and repented from Ilm al-Kalam. So be like Ibn Taymiyyah, first of all, who knew his deen. They said, when they describe Ibn Taymiyyah, they say, when he talks about any discipline and any science of Islam, you will assume and you will conclude that he only knows this science. If he talks about tafsir, you say he's a mufassir. Hadith, he's a muhaddith. Fiqh, he is a jurist, faqih. Theology, he's a theologian. because he mastered all these sciences. Then he studied the works of others and he critiqued them. He studied the works of the Greek philosophers and he refuted them. And he wrote a compendium, a book, الرد على المنطقيين, refuting the logicians, Greek logicians. He refuted the Rafida, Minhaj al-Sunnah. He refuted the Ash'ariyah. In his book, درء تعارض النقل والعقل. But he did that only after he became Imam in Islam. So my advice to my brothers, study the deen first. Is this clear to the questioner?
Jazakumullahu khair, Sheikh. Our next question is asking, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What are the conditions or rulings on wearing niqab if a woman wants to start implementing it?
If she wants to start wearing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the niqab is covering your face. And not, because you see now also it became fashionable, a fashion. Big openings of the eyes. So you see the whole eye and kuhel and eyelash. That's not niqab. So the opening is very small, so that only to enable you, so I cannot see your eyes. Or it is porous, where you can see and people will not see your face. That is the meaning of niqab. Not that your eyes all, and as you know, the beauty of the woman there in her eyes. Okay? And the cupid arrows, they come from the eyes. So sisters should fear Allah when you wear your niqab and wear your abaya, not the tight one. Huh? Your body is shown. You are niqabi, mashallah, and I can see your figure. That's not Islamic. So when you wear niqab, your face is covered, no one can see your face. May Allah strengthen your iman, my dear sisters, and keep you remain steadfast. Next, and will be the last question, inshallah.
Ameen, jazakumullahu khair. Yes, inshallah. Okay, last question. Our final question, Sheikh, is
sorry, Abdullah. Sheikh Salim, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you, Sheikh Salim?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. May Allah bless you, give you Jannat al-Firdaus. May Allah always keep you smiling. The last question, Sheikh, I wanted to throw in there a different question. Somebody asked yesterday about the Quran. The Quran is, we know that it is something with Allah always. One was, how was it preserved before? Was it always there? And second is, was in Jannah, will we still have the Quran because it's here as guidance to us? So in Jannah, will we also have Quran recitation?
First of all, the Quran is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah spoke it. It was written in the preserved tablet and then came down from the preserved tablet, okay, on one night to the Al-Bayt al-Ma'mur. And then from the Bayt al-Ma'mur came down in piecemeal, according to the occasion. So Jibreel would bring it down in pieces according to the occasions, and it was completed over a period of time, as we know.
Where was the tablet before?
The tablet is the Lawh al-Mahfuz with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Jazakumullah khair.
Okay, Lawh al-Mahfuz with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Quran is the speech of Allah. Allah spoke the Quran, and the Prophet ﷺ tells us that towards the end of time, this Quran will go back to Allah. It will be taken from the books and will be removed from the breasts, from the hearts and minds of people. People will not find Quran to read, and they will not recall anything. That's towards the end of time. This is what will happen. That's why the belief of Ahl Sunnah, Al-Quran Kalamullah. Quran is the speech of Allah. Minhu bada, from him it started, wa ilayhi ya'ud, and it will go back to Allah. regarding in the Jannah, are we going to read the Quran? Allah knows. If one wants to read the Quran there, and in the Hadith, as you know, just I remember this, that the memorizer of the Quran, he will be asked to read and ascend, read and ascend, read and ascend on that day.
Allahu Akbar.
And your position will be with the last ayah you read on that day. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who will be ascended in the high ranks of the Jannah. Ameen.
Ameen, ameen. So that means that's inside Jannah. And inshallah, Abdullah is doing his hifz. May everyone please make dua for him. And may Allah give him that, and Mikael, and the girls also, Fatima and Eliza, are both doing hifz. May Allah grant them success in it and give them that ability to recite in Jannah.
Ameen. And you will be ahead of them.
Inshallah, I hope so. Inshallah. Jazakumullah khair, Sheikh Salim. We love you for the sake of Allah, Sheikh. And as always, the final words are with you. Jazakumullah khair.
Barakallah bikum, jazakumullah khair. May Allah bless you, bless your family, protect you, protect your family, and may Allah elevate your status in this world and in Jannat al-Na'im. Ameen. Until we meet, inshallah, in the coming sessions, I leave you in Allah's company and protection. بحفظ الله ورعايته. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Brothers and sisters, Jazakumullah khair for tuning in. Abdullah, mashallah, beautiful questions. I wanted to say to everyone, please click on thumbs up, and always thumbs up the videos so that other people can see it also. But also subscribe if you're not subscribed, because we do go live for other sessions as well. And we do have other durus as well as halaqat, so you can join us then also. If you're not on our mailing list, please text us your email address. The phone number's in the chat, 07958 183 184. And inshallah, we'll keep you posted. We got more events coming up, more dawah materials, but we do need your support. If anyone wishes to donate, please make a donation contribution towards that, inshallah. I'm also starting a Friday evening halaqah, brothers and sisters, marital discord, family situations, just general Q&A. It's called Talk to Me Open Surgery, where I'll be reading stories. So if you don't want to ask live and you don't want your name mentioned, you can write in your story, your situation, what you've been through, any aspect of life in the past, present. And if you're going through something now, may Allah make it easy for you. I will be picking stories one at a time, and I'll be reading them out, and then I'll be discussing them with someone. And we'll go through the situation the person's going through, and we'll answer the fiqh side of it and Islamic guidance on it. Inshallah, it'll be a fruitful session on Friday evenings as well, inshallah. So if you'd like to support that, please get in touch. And if you have any stories you'd like to share, please write into us, info@alfitrah.com, or text us and we'll give you that email address, inshallah. Lastly, brothers and sisters, we had the Gender Wars episode 1. That was part 1 was a few weeks back, and then we had part 2, which was fantastic, mashallah, last week. Part 3 is coming up. It was going to be next week, so we're waiting for confirmations, and then we're going to announce that soon, inshallah, as well. May Allah bless every single one of you. Abdullah, I'll leave it back to you, inshallah, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
سبيل الدموع سبيل مريح